The misuse of labeling people as anti-Semitic is a serious problem that can have a devastating impact on individuals and communities. It is important to understand what anti-Semitism is, how it is misused, and the consequences of doing so. Anti-Semitism is prejudice, discrimination, or hatred directed against Jews. It can take many forms, including physical violence, verbal abuse, and social exclusion. Anti-Semitism is a form of racism, and it is important to remember that racism is never acceptable. The misuse of labeling people as anti-Semitic can happen in a number of ways. One common way is to label anyone who criticizes Israel or Zionism as anti-Semitic. This is a dangerous and harmful generalization, as it ignores the fact that there are many legitimate criticisms of Israel and Zionism that are not based on anti-Semitism. Another common way to misuse the label of anti-Semitism is to use it to silence dissent. For example, someone who is critical of Israeli government policies may be labeled as anti-Semitic in order to discredit them and prevent them from speaking out. This is a form of intimidation and bullying, and it is important to stand up against it. The consequences of mislabeling people as anti-Semitic can be severe. It can damage their reputations, make it difficult for them to find employment, and lead to social isolation. In some cases, it can even lead to physical violence. It is important to be aware of the misuse of the label of anti-Semitism and to challenge it when you see it. If you are unsure whether or not someone is being anti-Semitic, it is best to ask them directly. Here are some examples of how the label of anti-Semitism can be misused. A student is labeled as anti-Semitic for criticizing Israeli government policies in class. A journalist is labeled as anti-Semitic for writing an article that is critical of Zionism. A politician is labeled as anti-Semitic for supporting sanctions on Israel. A human rights activist is labeled as anti-Semitic for documenting human rights abuses by the Israeli military. A member of the public is labeled as anti-Semitic for expressing solidarity with the Palestinian people. In all of these cases, the label of anti-Semitism is being used to silence dissent and to intimidate people who are critical of Israel or Zionism. It is important to remember that criticism of Israel or Zionism is not the same as anti-Semitism. It is important to be aware of the misuse of the label of anti-Semitism and to challenge it when you see it. We must all work together to create a society where everyone is free to express their views without fear of being labeled as anti-Semitic or any other form of bigot.